Hey guys, George from SoundTraxx here, and today we're going to talk a little bit more in depth on how to set up your lights. Now when we're setting up the lights, there's actually two different concepts that both control how the lights work. The first is which button turns on the different lighting effects. This is known as function mapping. The other one determines what the lighting effect is. So when you turn on the light, how the light behaves. So as you can see, the two work together to create a realistic effect, but they're separate concepts. So let's talk about how to set up both of them. Okay, so first we're going to talk about function mapping, and this is determining which button control which effects. So for example, by default, the 0 key when you're in the forward direction controls the headlight, and conversely when you change directions, the reverse direction, function 0 will control the reverse light. Now the extra lights, the FX3, the FX4, the FX5, and the FX6 are controlled respectively by function 24, 25, 26, and 27. Now you'll have to reference your different DCC systems to determine how you can access those functions. Now the reason we moved those functions to the higher functions is usually when you turn on something like, say, the ditch lights, you turn them on and leave them on for the duration of your run. This left the single button presses, things like functions 5 and 6, to something you might use more when you're operating your locomotive as opposed to something you turn on once and leave. So how do we do this? So out of the package, function 0, as we mentioned, in forward direction, turns on our headlight. Now function 24 will turn on our FX3, and in this case I have it set to one of my ditch lights. Now the FX4 is controlled by function 25, and so now I have that set up to my other ditch light. So now you can see the headlight and both ditch lights are on, but I had to enable 3 different buttons to get that to work. So in order to make these work together, we do our function mapping. Now first of all, you'll have to decide for yourself which buttons you want to control what effects. But let's say, for example, on these ditch lights, we want to make them all controlled by the function 0. Which would be on when the function 0 is on. So let's turn them off. So now our ditch lights are off. So we go to our user's guide, and CV 1.259 controls the FX3. Now the value of this CV is going to determine which button controls the effect. So in this case, since we want function 0 to control the ditch lights, we're going to set CV 1.259 to a value of 0. Now because I have my headlight on, you'll notice that the ditch light turned on because function 0 is active and the decoder has activated that. Now the other ditch light should be set to function 25, but we're going to change that to 0 too. So we're going to take CV 1.260 and we're going to set that to a value of 0. Now you're going to notice the headlight and both ditch lights are on. When I turn function 0 off, they all go off together and they all turn on together. That's how function mapping works. So once you determine for yourself which buttons you want to control the lights, you'll set the CV to the respective value that corresponds with the button. Now that we've determined which buttons control the effect, now we want to determine what the effect does when we turn it on. So by default, the lights are on-off, which means they turn on when you turn the function on, they turn off correspondingly. But what we call hyperlights is the determining factor of which different lighting effects. This is things like Mars lights or gyro lights, rotary beacons, flash strobes, ditch lights, etc. And these are set in CVs 49 through 54. And to do this, we take the CV corresponding to the different lighting effect. Now in this exercise, we're going to change the FX3 and the FX4 lighting effect. We're going to make them ditch lights, but first, to show you how it works, we're going to take one of these ditch lights, we're going to turn it into a Mars light. So for the FX3, we're going to look at CV 51. And by referencing our user's guide, we see that setting a value of 2 will turn on a Mars light. So let's do that. So now you'll notice one of the ditch lights is actually alternating as a Mars light. You're going to see it flashing in the background, but the other one is not. This is what's known as hyperlights. So this is determining the effect. Now notice they still turn on and off with the 0 key. So now let's go ahead and set up our ditch lights. So for the FX3, using our user's guide as a reference, we're going to determine that CV51 should actually be set to a value of 73. For our type 1 ditch light, we want crossing logic enabled, and we're going to use this one as phase A, which means this one's going to be illuminated right out of the package. Now for the other ditch light, this is CV52. Now we want this to be the exact same type 1 ditch light and crossing logic enabled, but in this case we're going to enable phase B, and what that's going to do is that's going to turn it off initially, and as the flash rate goes in, you're going to see that phase A and phase B lighting effect as it alternates. So we're going to go ahead and set CV52 to a value of 105. Now the crossing logic means that I have to blow the horn, so when I blow the horn now, you're going to see the two ditch lights alternate and flash perfectly in sync. And then you can set what's called the hold time, and that determines how long that lighting effect lasts. So for more information, please go to our user's guide at SoundTraxx.com under the manuals, and you'll see how to set these CVs for you and your models.